Bonjour Inès, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Bonjour, oui, je vous entends bien.
D'accord. Euh, Votre conférence sera en anglais, vous préférez?
Oui, je préfère en anglais, car ma recherche est en anglais. Je suis plus confortable de parler en anglais qu'en français.
Aucun problème.
Mm.
C'est enregistré pour certains membres de notre équipe qui ne
Mhm.
pourront pas être là. Ça vous pose pas de problème?
Non, il n'y a pas de problème.
D'accord, super. On va attendre un petit peu, hein. On attend toujours 5 minutes, hein, n'ayez pas d'inquiétude.
Oui, bien sûr.
Merci en tout cas, hein, d'être présente. Vous êtes à Londres là? Vous êtes
Non, je suis en Irlande.
en Irlande?
Oui. Non, merci pour vous non, for giving me your platform so that I can
Ah,
do the
it's
research.
fine.
Yeah.
You are in the middle of your thesis?
Yeah, approximately.
Approximately, okay.
Mhm.
I must forgive my colleague Pascal Mougin not being able to attend your conference. Like me, he wrote a few works on the question of AI and literature. So he asked me really to send him the recording as soon as it's finished. But he is giving a course. He cannot attend. He's very
Okay.
sorry.
Mhm. I mean, that's great because although I haven't mentioned him in this present because I kept the resources very limited, but I have mentioned him in my thesis and one of his videos in the AI fiction.
AI fiction,
Yeah,
yes. Okay.
it was very beneficial.
Coucou Michael.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Bonjour Carla, je te nomme co-host.
Ah, bonjour Carla.
Bonjour.
Finally a face to the name.
Bienvenue Inès.
Merci.
As you see, there is many people today to listen
Mm.
to your work, Ines.
Well, I haven't checked how many people. Oh, I can see here 25 so far.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's great.
Well, it's 5:35 approximately. We'll give you the floor.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
People are still joining us.
28, that's great. I think I'll just try to see if the share screen works properly.
It should work, yes, without problem.
Yeah, I can see all the screens I can share. Okay, that's good.
Okay. People still coming. Yeah. I may have to leave you shortly at some point because my youngest boy is having a nap, and when he will wake up, he may come to the Zoom, or I have to take care of him. So please forgive me in advance.
Oh no, there's no problem.
If it does happen. Okay. I'm happy to introduce you to Ines Bouteldj, who is a PhD student currently in the middle of PhD thesis in Limerick University in Ireland, after having studied in Algeria in Université de Constantine for her young, and she's speaking fluently French, but as her research is in English, she will give her conference in English. So you got the floor, and we are very, very happy to have you on this question. That is very central because, you know, I'm coming from my background is literature, so it's about the main interest of my research to understand why are writers excited, and why are they so afraid also of the AI possibilities. And I'm going to publish in a few weeks, in May, a book about ChatGPT, and I've got 2 chapters on ChatGPT and writing this book. So I'm so happy to have you with us in this seminar, and to see your research in the middle of its course. À vous la parole, Inès, je vous en prie.
Merci beaucoup. Alors d'abord, je voudrais vous remercier pour me laisser joindre votre plateforme. J'étais très ravie de trouver la première conférence en fiction et intelligence artificielle. J'étais super contente car quand j'ai commencé ma recherche, il n'y avait presque pas de sources à propos de la littérature et l'intelligence artificielle. Alors c'était la majorité était sur comment dire, fait par des ingénieurs, par natural language generator, generating engineers, and some in the field of law. Alors j'étais très contente de trouver la conférence et de voir toutes les vidéos qui étaient en ligne. Je peux dire que c'était là où j'ai trouvé ma plateforme. And this is why I wanted to be part of your series of presentations for the blog you're working on, I believe. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading your research about ChatGPT. Because so far I think there is so much going on, and we haven't yet seen it academically organized. Yeah, so I will try to share my screen because I have a PowerPoint. I think it's all good now. Great. So I kept the title of this presentation as the title of my thesis, which is Artificial Intelligence and Literature, the Death, Cloning, and Resurrection of the Author. I know that the theme of all of these seminars is artificial intelligence and the history of artificial intelligence, I believe. So my topic does deal with this. The title is now not so clear, and hopefully it will become more clear as we see the slides of this presentation. But in general, my topic is about language generating machines in fiction, and the history and of the notion of authorship. Sorry, just to check, everyone can hear me, right, and see the slides?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Oh, no, what did I do? Well, I have already been presented. So yeah, my name is Ines Bouteldj, and I am currently at the University of Limerick in Ireland, at the School of English, Irish and Communication, and conducting this PhD research on artificial intelligence, mainly text-generated machines and literature. Okay, so my presentation is going to be of two parts. So this is the first part, where I will try to introduce my topic, to explain my research questions, my methodology of research, and my choice of body of literature studied. So I guess history often is seen as past, present, and how to say, an obscure future that is not so clear. But for me, I will start in the opposite order. Well, I will start from the future. So when I started my research almost 2 years ago, there was a couple of researchers who predicted that by 2049, there will be a New York Times bestseller written fully by an artificial intelligence. I guess now this information is no longer a shocker, because in 2023, a few months back, we have seen the launch of ChatGPT, and these days with GPT-4. And along this progress in artificial intelligence, there is a rise in the number of books available on Amazon that have ChatGPT as an author. Last year, so before this whole ChatGPT, before ChatGPT, there was already the apparition of websites that provide services to help authors with their writer's block, with outlining their stories or coming up with plots, and they were called AI novel writing softwares. Before I go to fiction, I want to talk more about AIs as authors in reality. So going back to 1984, there was the publication of a book titled "The Policeman's Beard is Half Constructed," and it was marketed as the first book written by a computer. In 2014, there was the publication of a short article on Los Angeles Times, generated by a bot, and it was published seconds after an earthquake in California. So it was faster than any article written and published by a human being. Then in 2016, since 2016, we have been noticing that works of art, either fully generated or co-authored by AI, have been entering contests and if not completely winning, I think there was a work this year or last year that actually won a prize. But anyways, these ones did not exactly win first place, but they have at least been accepted, and I'll say, yeah, they have been accepted in the contest and acknowledged. And then in 2017, Microsoft's AI published a collection of poems with the title Sunshine Misses Windows. And it was the first ever poetry collection written by an artificial intelligence. I mean, I personally have a little bit of a problem with all of these titles, like the first book written by a computer, the first work of art co-authored by an AI. First, there is so far nothing that was fully generated by an AI, at least in literature. I mean, there's always like a human in the loop, but there seems to they are being used a little bit more for maybe marketing, and also like there is obviously a race towards being the first to do something with a computer, and I don't think no work is going to claim this title because it will come gradual. So we started with co-authorship, then like always human in the loop, then like the humans will be less involved maybe, until we finally have a finished product without the intervention of humans, at least in the final result. As for my research questions, so I think with ChatGPT being everywhere on social media, we have seen a lot of people trying to see if their followers can actually detect if it's a tweet, for example, written by a human or by ChatGPT, and we can clearly say that the task of differentiating between machine-written and human-written text is definitely becoming more difficult. So the machine is becoming better each time at generating a language that sounds human. So my first question would be, how do texts generated by AI challenge our current understanding of authorship? Who would be the author of the artificially generated text? I have a few possibilities, which are, it could be the engineer who wrote the code. It could be the authors of the text that have been fed to the algorithm to learn from, maybe the prompter, or authorship can even extend to readers of the work. Or maybe there could bring, AI could bring us a new notion of authorless texts, which maybe we cannot exactly explain the vision right now, but it's something that we could see with the while these AIs and the writing is evolving. I mean, it all depends on how the public will react to them. Finally, speaking of readers, how will these texts be read and made sense of, especially by the general public? So would artificially generated text strengthen the stand of literary critics who defend the independence of the text from its writer or any social and historical factors? Mainly, this reminds me of the works of formalists, new critics, post-structuralists. I mean, there has been a talk about separating the text from its writer, or from the history. It was or from the historical time that it was published in, and all these elements that contribute to the making of a text. And maybe with AI, I mean, the idea will become more clear, considering that there is no direct human author writing this text. Also, would artificially generated texts put more emphasis on the role of the reader in giving meaning to the text, again, speaking of a reader, I guess this revolves more about reader-centered theories. So considering that these texts, at least so far, have no copyright and everyone can like claim authorship in a way, like they can play around with the text, they can change whatever they want. So the reader can, in a way, become more than only a consumer of the text, but someone contributing to the making of the text. And finally, I think a question that would rise, or at least a discussion that would rise towards the end of my thesis would be, if AI is demonstrating creativity, then will we keep on considering it a tool, or will it be elevated to a creator? So it's just, to put it more simply, is AI, or will AI be more than a tool and become a creator? Next, I'm going to explain a little bit about my methodology. Considering that I am a student of literature, no engineer, or so I had to look into works of fiction. So in order to explore the questions, my research questions, I am conducting a close reading of a selected body of fiction, as well as texts of literary theory and criticism. A comprehensive analysis of literature on human and AI interactions might be essential to attempt to predict the reactions of readers to texts generated by AI. And a discussion of creativity and originality will definitely be unavoidable. So the three texts that I have chosen for my research, which in a way show a timeline of the apparition of machine authors. So from 1721 to 1953 to 2018, all of these three stories have, in a way, shape, or form, a machine that writes literature. So in Gulliver's Travels, it's just a short part, I mean, like a passage or two passages about a philosopher who attempts to make a word randomizer that would help anyone become an author, even if they don't have much knowledge. In The Great Automatic Grammatizator by Roald Dahl, which is a short story, so it's a little bit longer than the passages I'm analyzing in Gulliver's Travel. It's an engineer who created a calculator that can make some fast calculations, attempt to do the same with language, making a machine that could write a story in a very short amount of time. And then finally in Ada, it starts as just a regular detective novel, but soon or quickly it turns, there's definitely something new into it, which the person kidnapped turned out to be an algorithm rather than a human being. And from there, we see sort of a relationship growing between between Logan Frank, who is the main character, and also the detective that ends up finding Ada, but not delivering it or her back to her owners, but actually having a conversation with her about writing, and in the process, somehow teaching her to write a best-selling novel, which was from the beginning her goal. She was programmed to do that. Now, I think many people, probably maybe in the scientific fields, would ask why study such a thing that is happening now in reality while looking at fiction, something that is not true. Here, I would try to defend my choice and say that fiction greatly contributes to our imaginary, or the public's imaginary. In fact, this body of texts, not only this fiction that I am analyzing, but let's say movies and series and all these cultural narratives, are called by Cave AI narratives. And he defines them as an ensemble of texts, images, spectacles, events, and cultural artifacts that tell a story. So, and they are important because, as I've already said, they do contribute greatly to the public's imaginary and can have a direct impact on real life situations. And I have examples about this. For example, AI fictions can influence students' academic and professional trajectories. Actually, teachers have tried to use fiction to help their students explore potential research fields that they might be interested in. Also, now moving from students, even researchers in big data and business refer to work of fiction to envision the negative effects that AI may have on our future. And this helps them put regulations to avoid such consequences. So I would say that even these people who know these machines, or who know like the science behind such machines, even them, they refer back to fiction in order they use these scenarios to imagine potential futures and try to stop them if there is any negative impact. Then there is the Asimov's laws of robotics, which they were first mentioned in the work of fiction. However, a lot of scientific literature refers back to them. And then, same as for students, the readings that AI researchers carry for pleasure can impact their career choices and research focus. So I think indirectly or even directly, sometimes fictions can give ideas to people within the field, and those ideas, people can look into them, or the researchers can look into them, can execute the ideas and turn them into a reality. And in 2018, the House of Lords Selected Committee on Artificial Intelligence have actually expressed concerns about certain narratives, or at least about some current narratives that are unrealistic, negative, and eccentric images of AI to the public. So I think there has been noticed that the public sees AI as a scary technology, while let's say that most of the public doesn't exactly have accurate and scientific and real info about AI, but because of all of these fictions around that portray an evil AI, the public is scared. And if the public is scared, they can affect many things. They can affect amount of monies that are given to labs for research, and at least this is one of the effects that they can have, or like not accepting a technology that is put out there, like ChatGPT have been accepted by the public, and I guess it has been like portrayed positively, but something opposite could happen. For example, where the public could reject a technology that is not necessarily bad, but is imagined to be bad. And the opposite can also happen. and speaking more about the history of artificial intelligence in fiction. So while the term artificial intelligence was actually coined in 1956 at a conference discussing the idea of artificial intelligence, the first appearance of intelligent creations have been traced back to Homer's Iliad, where the god of fire was described crafting maidens of gold to attempt to him. Since then, people have not ceased telling similar stories that with technological advancement transform from fiction to reality. In a way, for the longest time, humans have been dreaming about these beings that resemble them, but sort of have no free will, but just to attend to their orders. And it's in a sort artificial intelligence. And yeah, now with it being more of a reality, I think it's taken more of a form that we recognize, which is computers. Finally, while the general fiction that talks about AI or involves AI is called AI narratives, I would like to refer back to Professor Valérie Boudouin, which gave a name to this even smaller group of fictions, which are the fictions that deal with not all AI in general, but with text-generating machines. And she called it La Littératrothèque, and she defines it as the library of machines that are readers and authors. These machines only exist in fiction and are capable of analyzing or generating texts. So in a way, they are like a fictitious ChatGPT. AI or machine generating text can result in a birth of a new author. And to explain this, I'll refer back to the fiction, which is throughout Ada, many themes and questions arise, mainly about the machine achieving simultaneous authorship and consciousness. So in Ada, the main character questions whether the algorithm is an author or not. And at the same time, whenever this idea rises, that this algorithm may have turned into an author, so there was the birth of a new author, there's always the question of consciousness that follows up. And many people, actually, not only this character in this book, believe that machines can never achieve authorship, because in a way they can also never achieve consciousness. I mean, this is for sure debatable, and it's very far in the future, so I wouldn't put much thought into it. But yeah, authorship and consciousness sort of rise at the same times. And this is, as I said, an opinion shared by many people. And another theme that constantly rises when there is machines involved or machine writers involved is literary fiction versus popular fiction. In both Ada and the Great Automatic Grammatizator, the more the machine proves itself capable of generating texts that is similar to human writing, the higher humans seem to put criteria for it to achieve authorship. What I mean with that is that whenever a text seems readable or good enough, we seem to be extra critical about it, just in a way because we don't want to see the machine as equal or as good as human beings. In Ada, the author, Bello, sort of leaves all questions open. So he says, he tells a story, and the reader, I mean, can have different answers or different reactions. yeah, I mean, depending on the person, there is no definitive answer. It's a great, I think it's a great novel because it just raises a discussion about AI or about text generating machines. While in The Great Automatic Grammatizator, Dahl is more sure about his character's stance toward machine writing. So Nipe, who is the main character in this story, believes that a machine is incapable of original thoughts. It can handle no problems except those that resolve themselves into mathematical terms. And so he practically turned, no, he was inspired to make a writing machine out of basically a giant calculator that he already made. So he just made a second one that resembles it, but deals with language. And he came up with this idea because he thought that English grammar is governed by rules that are almost mathematical in their strictness. And Dahl's story can be read as an allusion to genre fiction writers who write according to publishers' requirements rather than make good use of their freedom of artistic creativity. And moving to explaining my thesis title. So I had in my title, The Death, Resurrection, and Cloning of the Author. By the death of the author, I mean the automatization of creative writing may lead to the writing profession to come to an end, and thus depriving human authors from their profession and source of income. As for the resurrection and cloning of the author, I define it as the copying of style of an already established author, either deceased or still alive. To give an example, let's say if today we decide to feed all of the works of J.K. Rowling into an algorithm and ask the algorithm to generate like an 8 Harry Potter, which is an idea that have been done a few years back. And if it does a good job, that would mean that we somehow cloned J.K. Rowling. As for the resurrection, it's the same thing, but feeding the text of Shakespeare, let's say, or some author that has long been gone, and try to generate a work in his or her style. As for the death of human authorship, in the fictions I'm discussing, when the philosopher in Gulliver's Travels had of a goal to create a word randomizing machine that could make the most ignorant person at a reasonable charge and with a little bodily labor write books in philosophy, poetry, politics, laws, mathematics, and theology without the least assistance from genius or study. I think this resembles very much maybe a more advanced ChatGPT, where anyone could come up with the simplest of idea and just asks the AI to elaborate on it, to make it better, to make it more complicated. And if everyone becomes an author, or if everyone starts putting knowledge out there because it's so easy to generate, then in a way, no one is an author. You know, if everyone is an author, then no one is an author. And that would just lead to the death of human authorship. And in the Great Automatic Grammatizator, the short story ends by the narrator praying, "Give us strength, O Lord, to let our children starve." So this unnamed narrator decided to stick to his ethics and beliefs and not sell his style to Nipe. Nipe, who was now the owner of a publishing house, who would buy authors, already established authors, make a contract with them that they will keep secrecy, and then generate texts that are very much similar to what they would have written, and sell them and then just split the profit. So there was this narrator who decided to fight for human authorship, but unfortunately, since Knight's publishing house took basically over almost all of the publishing industry, this author had no chance, because the machine can generate texts in a very short period of time, and thus can generate many texts before this human author can write anything. So he had no longer any chance to publish under his own name. So the only solution that he could have is to just sell his name and style, but he decided to go against it, and sort of lead his children to starvation. So the cloning of the author, obviously, the great automatic grammatizator revolves around this idea, because again, already established authors that already had published books under their names and whom they have written themselves were being bought by Knipe and then used as a model for the machine to copy. This is how these authors who were still alive were cloned. As for the resurrection of the author, it hasn't been discussed in any of the fiction I'm dealing with, but there is a real instance of it. In 1993, a researcher called Scott French made a programming machine to write like the late Jacqueline Suzanne, who is an all-time bestseller. This is an example of resurrection of the author. I mean, French himself literally described the process as a resurrection that was more philosophical. So the technology is not perfect yet, and since then I haven't seen it been done again. I mean, yeah, there was attempts, but they weren't that great. But what happened with this is that there were many questions that raised in copyright, because he wasn't directly copying passages from any of her already existing books. There was nothing that could be read in this new book, which is titled just this one, that could be found in previous books. However, the style was copied, and it was sort of the first time that that happens through a machine. And there isn't much info about the law case, except that we know that French Scott ended up settling with, I think, Suzanne's publishing house. They had some deal and decided to just agree upon it. Going back again to literary versus popular authors or fiction, just this once, just like in the great automatic grammatizator, seems to provoke two categories of reactions. Some people were in favor of, some people were in favor of formulaic literature or genre literature, while others were against it and thought about it as a non-serious way of writing. It wasn't that valuable, not so great. So the people who are in favor of genre literature haven't liked French's project, and they have considered it, basically they have just not considered it a work of authorship, because they believe that in order for this machine to publish anything like the author, the original author, Suzanne, this machine must feel also like the author. So the difference between the machine and the human author is that they understood the feelings that they wrote about. So the feelings of love, the feelings that arise after a breakup, and all of those themes that are usually discussed in romance books. while authors or while critics who were not in favor of genre literature and thought about it as not serious are just formulaic, that just like anyone could read such write such stories, have actually praised HAL, the name of the computer that French used to generate the book. They have praised the computer and thought that it did a pretty good job in comparison to the novels available in the literary market. So the French's work, or the copy, the resurrection of Jacqueline Suzanne, was repeatedly compared to works of literary fiction, but there seems to be always a need to precise that a machine could write trashy page turners, but not works similar to Tolstoy, Faulkner's, Morrison's, or Joyce. So, in a way, when machine generates a work, this work is just put with this group of non-serious literature. It has already been a problem and a discussion in the world of literary studies, but I think it will even arise more often now that machines are involved. And we'll see if we can elevate first these popular authors to be accepted, and then maybe make the text generated by the machine accepted as well, or thought of as quality texts. Now I will move to my second part, which is a little bit more theoretical, and I will be defining and discussing the notion of authorship. So with the machines writing texts, researcher thinks that many definitions are going to be blurred, or are going to be blurry, not exactly clear, because, for example, Pereira and Marcial in a research in 2016 not only question who writes in generative literature or who is the author of these texts, but also ask who reads, who are the readers. Because since the user of the generating tool cannot predict the end result, then she or he is also the first reader of the work produced. Sorry, I'll just check the chat. Oh, it's just Alexander leaving? Or no, someone else leaving probably. Anyways, I'll go back to the presentation.
Yes, no problem.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah,
worry.
I thought it was a question or
No.
Okay. Yeah. So I was saying, since the user of the tool, let's say the prompter or any user like us when we use ChatGPT, we cannot exactly know what the machine is going to write. So in a sense, we are both the writer of the prompt or the ones who wrote the request. So we sort of have an idea of what we want, but we don't know what kind of results we'll be having. So in a way, she or he, who is the user of the generating tool, is also going to be the first reader of the work produced. And so Pereira and Marcial claim that there will be a new notion that is of the reader, but which begin with WR, which is a mixture between writer and reader. And all of my research revolves around AI shaking our initial premise that the author must be a single creative individual. Now, even me, when I first asked those questions, which I haven't changed for the sake of the research, I mean, they have to stay the way they are. But I came with the idea that the author is going to be one of a list of suggestions that I had. Like, was it going to be the human authors whose texts been used to teach the algorithm? Is it going to be the prompter, the engineer? It was always this one person basically in my mind, which I believe this notion of the single creative individual is still haunting us, or is still the major image of an author. even though it has appeared a long time ago in the 19th century, I believe, and literary critics have already discussed it and fought against it, but in the popular consciousness, let's say, it is still very much the same till today. Oh, why isn't this changing? Oh, okay. Yeah. And this single creative author is what we know now as the Romantic author. Reading and analysis habits are kept from the 19th century. The author was strongly and still remains, although maybe less so, central to the understanding of literary work. So in order, when we read the work, we are indirectly thinking of what is the author is trying to tell us and why. We might look into the life of this author to understand work, or read work in order to build, to make, or to write the biography of this author. In a way, we are always using this work either to know the author or try to know the author in order to understand the work. But since then, these practices have been defied by many generations of literary critics, like the formalists, new critics, and post-structuralists. But still, the notion of the romantic author is still central to many fields, like copyright. The notion of the romantic author has so far survived, as there seems to always exist a traceable direct human author to any text. When we imagine the writer of a text, we see, this person sitting at his or her desk on her computer typing, or maybe a little bit back in time on a machine, on a typing machine, maybe using paper and a pen. But there's always this person sitting at a desk, isolated from anyone else, and just thinking of what they could write. But we ignore that many others are contributing to this work. One of the most, one of the people who contribute to the writing of texts are, for example, editors. Also, publishers with their requirement, the reader market, so readers, what readers would want, would like to buy, would not like to. So all of this actually contributes to the writing of this text. So I'm thinking that now that we have AI will be able to give us as a society a shock to reimagine the writer. And since we don't yet have a stable image, it will actually help us to question long held notions, and to think, where does this idea of authorship comes from, and why do we think of the author as such, as this creative individual? And this can be, if we look into historical research, it can obviously we can obviously find an answer, which I'll provide you with in a minute. But I guess the public is still pretty much thinking of the author as this individual. So to investigate the history of authorship, I basically split it into two eras: pre-romantic authorship and then the romantic authorship. If we look into the roots of the word author, we can trace them back to the 14th century, and it originated from Latin and Greek words. And back in the pre-romantic era, which is before the 18th century, we had different notion of authorship. There was a scriptor, a compilator, commentator, and auctor. Borrow, who is the researcher who worked on this, have said that we should not make the mistake of trying to use any present notions to understand these. So I'll try my best not to look at them in a modern way. So I just describe them. And we'll try to move from there to the Romantic author to just see the change. So back in the pre-Romantic authorship era, there was a scripter who copies other scholars' words without modifications or additions. So I think in a way I suppose back then it was all he, but he was like a copying machine. I think we had no copying machines back then or printing machines. So he was just that, making several copies of a work. Then there was the compilator, who combines passages that are not his own. So passages that have already been written by someone else, they would just combine them in one work. A commentator, who copies other people's words and adds his as extra for clarification purposes. And then the author, who mainly writes his own words but adds the words of others for confirmation. I need to say that these notions of authorship, they were mainly in the religious field, because fiction wasn't given much importance. And to be honest, no one really cared who came up with like a folkloric story, with a song, with a play that was being played. Like it didn't matter. No one questioned about the origins of it. They just enjoyed it at the present moment. However, in the Romantic period, it was a time of turbulence and great transformation on multiple levels. In the West, the West went through many political and intellectual movements that asserted individualism and national rights. So the whole basically political and social atmosphere was shaken during this period, and it brought a lot of changes. But in the art world as well. So it was obviously the art world was affected. And this period was marked by immense changes in artistic style, in cultural attitudes, and in relations between artists and society. And that's when the notion of the Romantic author, as we know him or her today, emerged. It didn't emerge in a linear way, and did not rise just overnight, but it was the result of many changes in mentalities, philosophies, commerce systems, and laws. So copyright, which in a sense, romantic authorship and copyright, how to say, evolved together. Each affected the other. So I don't think I can say which came first, but you know, copyright affected the definition of the Romantic author, but also the emergence of this person, this individual who would fight for his writing and say that I came up with, that it's my individual work and I deserve to be acknowledged for it, also affected copyright. And this came from a philosophy. So the philosophies of Locke and Hegel, their concepts of natural law and personality model are often referred to when justifying property rights or copyright, and hence the concept of authorship. So the Lockean natural law, authors have the right to benefit from their creations and to be rewarded for their contribution to society. Individuals own their bodies. Consequently, they own the product of the labor of their bodies. So this is to be paid for work that someone has written. But then why is it this person's work? How come? And I think Locke explains that. He is, Hegel. Hegel, not like Locke, who was labor-oriented, he was personality-oriented. Hegel defends individuals' entitlement to intellectual works they produce by considering them as extensions of their personalities due to the investment of their will in the creation of this work. So while Locke believed that people own their bodies and thus own the work that their bodies did, Locke believed that these artworks or intellectual works are the product of someone's personality and individual characteristics. Hence, they should be acknowledged for that. And the features of authorship. So throughout my readings of copyright and a few other, literary theories, I have realized that in order to be an author, you sort of have to be all of these, or at least the majority of these adjectives. To be creative, original, and inspired. These are the three adjectives that were used to describe the author in copyright back when it was first discussed in 1710, I think, with the rise of the Statute of Anne. And also, I realized that authorship is a social construction that allows for the function of many systems within society. So the author has truly no clear image, and it's definitely not an individual. It's too many people and too many, many factors that contribute to the coming of a work. But we need this idea of this individual just so that our system as a society, our economic or commerce system and criminal system function. Because since there is a publishing industry and many people work into it, obviously there is a product to sell and people need to be paid for their work. So labor, and at the same time, the name of brand. Many authors now have their names as brands, thinking about J.K. Rowling and Stephen King. I mean, anything published under the name of J.K. Rowling would probably have instant readership, regardless of the quality. There's like a trust built between J.K. Rowling and her readership or society. So we needed like this image of this person that we always have trust in. It comes from authority as well, to know that this person knows how to write, that she has something to offer to us that we cannot find anywhere else. But also, I think for the criminal system, for praise or accountability, they are the two faces of like the same coin. Because if an author does a great job, has a great work, they will be praised, they will be everywhere, known as one of the greatest writers in history. But also if they, let's say, make a mistake, or even if it's intentional, if they write something that is, let's say, considered racist or considered not ethical, there is this someone who we can hold accountable. While with AI so far, when, let's say, ChatGPT writes something that is not ethical and acceptable, we're not sure who to hold accountable for it. Because, I mean, the machine is not aware. The engineers have no role in that. They try their best to put rules into the machine to make it not generate anything that is unacceptable, or something that would make people behave in an acceptable way. But I mean, they have no control over it. Sometimes even the prompter didn't exactly ask for that. So we don't exactly know who to hold accountable for bad ideas. While with traditional authorship, basically this authorship of just having one name on the book cover, we know directly who to blame. And lately we can see all of these claims rising around the J.K. Rowling being transphobic. And yeah, now people are not exactly coming for the publisher who published her works, but they are coming directly for J.K. Rowling. And this is also because she has a platform. Authors nowadays have social media platforms where these social media platforms are sort of a reflection of their personalities. And it is in a way something that is keeping this notion of the romantic author alive, because these authors still have control over their work, because I mean, if when J.K. Rowling, let's say, said that Dumbledore was part of the LGBTQ community, that was never mentioned in the books. However, all of a sudden, because of her declaration, this image about Dumbledore changed. And that only shows that she still owns those characters. Those characters are hers, and she still has a lot of power over this works, over her works. However, there's also, let's say, the notion of fan fiction, which blurs the lines between copyright. I guess no one who writes fan fiction is gaining money from this, considering that these characters are not theirs. But in a way, the public allows themselves and don't feel like it's stealing to take some author's characters and make a story, a personal story out of them. And I think with AI, it would be very much easier to do so. Because if we ask the AI to make a story that we either don't like or feel like we could add things to it, we could directly just say it's ours because of the little changes that we made, even though most of the writing was done by the machine. And yeah, this is where the notions of the reader, the writer, the user of the AI just comes all together, and we cannot exactly define them and separate them clearly. Finally, to death and authorship. Death and authorship seems to have a very close relationship for some reason, because copyright revolves around the life of the author. And you know how a work only goes into a public domain decades after the death of an author. And also, works of literature keep authors alive, like Shakespeare, for example. Many people who lived at the same era as Shakespeare, no one remembers their names anymore. We don't even know if they existed or not. But Shakespeare is still remembered today. And so, yeah, works of literature sort of keep authors alive. Now, the death of a human author is what tells us that the number of works this to write is limited, and that's what gives them value. So in a way, authorship arises from the idea that this human has only limited years to live and limited number of works to write. But with AI, all of this is just like thrown into the bin, because AI is not a human being. It will only evolve. It wouldn't die. I mean, unless we put an end to it, but yeah, it wouldn't like naturally die. And it can generate an unlimited number of works in a very short of time. So if I have a literary text generator that everyone can use, and it would generate endless of texts in a very short amount of time, what value do these works have? And this is like, I guess, just like more of an open question. But yeah, these are all just the blurry ideas that AI is now leading us into. And many people demand the deromanticization of authorship. For example, Craig and Kerr argue that the idea of accrediting copyrights to machine-generated works is contradictory. To put it in simpler words, you know, my question of can a machine be an author? Basically, Craig and Kerr say that that is contradictory, because instead of investigating who the author of the AI text might be, which might be the machine itself, they ask, why are we so desperately trying to attribute authorship to AI-generated art? Know how in the past, no one had a problem with not knowing who the originator of a story was. It was sort of just the society's yeah, it was just societies as a whole. Anyone could use it and anyone could enjoy it. So, but since that was limited, since the emergence of the romantic author, and not to put, how to say, not to maybe say something that the researchers haven't said, but that's at least how I understand it. So why are we forcing ourselves to find who the author of a generated text is, or trying so hard to attribute authorship to AI generated text? In the same way, Fukumoto has been advocating for the deromanticization of copyright law. According to him, romantic notions have negatively affected copyright law by causing an unnecessary inflation of the importance of the author. And I guess going back to the discussion of my own questions, I think I have sort of been seeing things in binary. It's either, the author is either an individual genius or a machine. Or even when I suggested other solutions or other answers, other people, I haven't considered that it could be none of them or all of them. In the end, the writing of a text, there's also the standing on the shoulders of giants. The individual genius learned from many people that came before him or her, but also society and what are the requirements of readers, what is accepted and not. To say authorship is human, that is fundamentally connected with the humanness. It is to invoke the romantic author, and nor is it to impose a kind of chauvinism that privileges human-produced artifacts over those that are machine-made. I think in a way, it's not to say that what humans made are better than what a machine made. I guess at the end, if we understand it and we find it good, then the machine has done its job. So not to compare between people and the machines, but just to acknowledge that authorship is a human, because authorship, at least how it was a communication between people. It's an exchange, a language exchange between people. And we don't need to take that same concept and attribute it to machines. I think also Julia Kristeva's theory of intertextuality argues well against the notion of the individual genius, because she argues that texts are independent. Every new depends on all those produced prior to it. So intertextuality is an anti-bibliographic interpretation as opposed to romantic literary theory. So it doesn't look into the biography of the writer, because it sees text as a manifestation of systems, codes, and traditions established established by previous works of literature and or other art forms. Finally, I could say that AI can make us question these long-held beliefs, but also it may strengthen the stand of certain literary theories that the death of the author, or the disappearance of this image of the individual genius did not come with AI. Actually, literary critics have long been on the process of de-emphasizing the author. It started with the new critics and the intentional fallacy, where they basically said that we cannot exactly know what the intention of the author, even if there was an intention at all. And if there was, how are we going to know if the author actually expressed it in the right words? And will the reader have the same understanding of what the author has said or tried to say? So in a way, there is no need to look for an intention. We don't even need it. Also, Barthes differentiated between the author, the person, and the author, the subject. And maybe having AI will actually help us separate these two people. I mean, because if people understand that AI is not a magic tool, it's actually learning from what people have written throughout history, and it's just finding patterns. So in a way, we're just making everyone right at the same time, and we can see like the person being separated from that who writes, that who makes a language function. And a very good quote that can summarize this whole research almost is from Beckett, who was also referred to by Foucault, and is what matters who's speaking. Someone said, what matters who's speaking? And I would say, what matters who's writing? If it's a machine or a human, as long as we understand the result and we like it and find it useful. So maybe instead of having a new notion of authorship, the AI will be just part of the numerous author functions that Foucault listed in his essay, What is an Author? Well, this is just a bibliography of all the works I have referred to. I think at the end, I would say that there were a lot of maybes in this presentation. One, because I haven't exactly finished it, and two, because I don't think there will be any exact answers anyway. I am discussing something that that is coming to be, doesn't exactly exist, and we can only know in a few years when we see the reaction of the public, of critics, of publishers and all of the publishing industry, to exactly know, to have answers to this, to see what kind of notions will rise, notions that will keep our commercial and criminal systems functioning. And finally, I would say thank you very much for taking the time to be here today to listen to my presentation. The slides were pretty text heavy, and considering time, I hope that I wasn't speaking too much and everything was clear. If you have any questions, of course, don't hesitate to ask me now, or for anyone watching in the future. There's my email here on the slide. There's my LinkedIn or my Twitter handle, whatever platform is preferred. So again, thank you very much. And I think I'll give the floor to the moderators of this meeting. And I hope to, to have some good feedback from all the listeners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ines. You were in the very center of the questions that came to us when we began this project on the AI and culture. Maybe we can switch to French, as you spoke French perfectly for the question, or we can stay in English. It's up to you, but don't be shy to ask questions in French. Posez des questions en français, hein. Inès comprend vraiment bien le français. Voilà, bah, écoutez, moi j'aurais des questions, mais peut-être je vais laisser les personnes qui ont assisté à ce séminaire commencer. Je vous donne la parole. Allez-y.
Si vous voulez, je peux ouvrir avec des petites remarques, sachant que je suis très loin de ce champ de recherche particulier, puisque je suis plutôt historien des sciences et des techniques. If necessary, I can ask my questions both in French and in English, okay, for those who wouldn't understand French. One of the first things is about Roland Dahl, the great automatic grammatizator. You gave me Vous m'avez donné envie de le lire. Est-ce que vous avez lu une œuvre qui ressemble un peu à ce thème? C'est le littératron.
Le littératron. I have heard about it. I haven't exactly read it, but it was on the list that Professor Baudouin, I think, complied, and I think I've heard about it from someone else. But to be honest, I haven't read it just yet, and considering that I'm focused more on the literature that I need for my research.
Ok, merci. J'ai écrit deux, trois petites pages dans ma thèse qu'il faudra que je publie un jour sur les révoltes littéraires contre la cybernétique et ce qui était déjà l'intelligence artificielle, le littératron et puis les nouvelles de Pierre Boulle, l'homme qui détestait les machines, l'homme qui haïssait les machines, en font partie. C'est un corpus intéressant et je vous remercie de l'enrichir avec votre propre corpus. Et il y a une chose qui m'a vraiment épaté, c'est ce House of Lords Select Committee on Artificial Intelligence qui donne un avis sur les negative narratives about artificial intelligence. C'est pas une question, mais ça me rappelle étonnamment l'Union des écrivains soviétiques qui émettaient des fatwas et des oukases contre les tendances négatives et les descriptions anti-soviétiques de la société. Je ne sais pas si on peut trouver du jdanovisme dans la Chambre des Lords à Londres, mais il y a peut-être un rapprochement à faire, c'est une question.
Yeah.
Pardon, et est-ce qu'il y a eu des réactions en Angleterre contre cette initiative de la Chambre des Lords?
I'm not sure, to be honest. This is a remark that I found in one of the research, so it was more of a side note, just to show that people do actually care about fiction, and that fiction does have an effect. But what I would say is lately, I think this year, there was also this this artist, this like robot artist that also stood in front of a committee. I don't remember exactly what the committee was, but it was also in England. And it tried to basically explain how she, a robot, can be an artist. So I think it's in the same, how to say, it's the same thing. And we need people within the government, these people that are basically also like creating laws and trying to limit at least bad effects, to be literate about the effect and the reality of AI. However, these people are not exactly researchers within the field, and yeah, so we need more people to know what exactly AI is, that it's not a magic tool, and how it exactly functions. So that there isn't a fake or negative opinion about it out there.
Intéressant comme limite, comme contrainte mise sur la création. Another very detailed remark is about the romantic writers, the individualistic vision of the romantic writers, and it crossed my mind that one of the most archetypal romantic writers, Alexandre Dumas, was far from an isolated individual author. On the contrary, he had a veritable team of collaborators.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, that is sort of good to say that I mean, it would mean that the idea of the individual creative author hasn't been exactly always accepted or seen as a truth. That there was something else, and people, at least writers, knew. Not everyone was, let's say, faking it. Because I think right now I'm thinking of computers and authors in the same way, in that they are a black box. In why we are not seeing, we see the human as a creative genius, but not the computer, because the computer, we know that we have fed what we have fed to it. We don't exactly know how it works, but we know what kind of works have been put into it. But with the human, we don't exactly follow from the birth of this person, from like learning language, learning at school, all of the grammar books, linguistics, all the literature that they have absorbed in order to become today the person or the writer that they become. So because, yeah, we only see the writer at this instant when he was or she was writing as, I would say, an adult, and we haven't seen all of these people that they have learned from. And while it's much easier, maybe not so, but it's maybe easier to accept it from a computer than from a person.
Merci.
Merci.
I was on the point to the answer.
Yes, you are.
Merci. Raoul avait une question.
Oh, thank you, Alexandre. Thank you, Ines. But I go to discuss with you in French because I will happy to speak French. Alors, Ines, j'ai apprécié votre production. Vous êtes parti sur deux angles. Le premier qui a questionné la présence de l'IA dans la littérature et l'autre aspect où vous avez posé l'IA en tant qu'instance de création de littéraire. D'abord, c'est un commentaire. Lorsqu'aujourd'hui, on prend même la chaîne de production du livre,
Oui.
on a toujours eu des interventions d'IA au niveau des correcteurs grammaticaux que certains éditeurs utilisent. Donc, l'une de mes préoccupations, est-ce qu'on a entendu aujourd'hui ChatGPT pour pouvoir parler d'IA comme instance dans la création littéraire? Bon, ça, c'est un commentaire. Mais ma seconde, aujourd'hui, je souhaiterais, si possible, qu'on aborde une question de narratologie comparée. Je me disais, aujourd'hui, quelles sont les ruptures et les continuités qui peuvent se créer lorsque une IA produit un texte littéraire et un humain? Ça, c'est le premier volet de mes questionnements. Et au fur et à mesure, avec la permission des organisateurs, je vais essayer de déballer les autres.
I mean, yeah, the note that you have raised, it's exactly on the point. This is something that I have thought about because computers have been gradually involved in the writing process. Like, let's say, you know, even while writing my thesis, when I put a word and then I look into a synonym using Word, yeah, like, you know, I can say that the machine there has contributed to my work. It's not exact. I haven't like exactly written that word. It was suggested to me. Or with emails now, when you start writing and Gmail just suggests to you the rest of the text. And yeah, it definitely did not need the AI to appear in order for us to discuss this. However, I think that AI has been such a big leap that it came as a shocker, and it's making people who are not exactly aware of how the writing process happens, who are not writers themselves, think about, oh, how does the writing happens, and how can a machine do the same as a human? As for your question, can you please repeat it again? Because I forgot, I was thinking about this idea.
The second one? The second question?
Yeah.
Je demandais quelles sont les ruptures et les continuités qui peuvent exister d'un point de vue esthétique lorsqu'une machine ou une intelligence artificielle produit contenu et un humain produit du contenu. Parce que pour moi, à mon sens, la question, le mythe de l'orthoralité en lui-même n'existe pas pour moi. Il y a seulement avec l'intelligence artificielle un renouvellement de la question d'auteur. Donc, je souhaiterais plutôt demander aujourd'hui, est-ce qu'on a véritablement des ruptures ou quelles sont les ruptures et les continuités qui se jouent lorsqu'une machine produit un texte littéraire et un humain?
Okay, well, I'll need a second to think about this because I'm not sure I exactly have the answer, and I would definitely need the intervention of anyone if they have an opinion to say about this. Yeah, speaking of rupture and continuation, can you just explain that exactly what you mean by that?
Au fait, en termes de rupture, c'est-à-dire que on peut mettre côte à côte une écriture, une production littéraire produite par un humain, et de l'autre, celle produite par peut-être une intelligence artificielle GPT, est-ce que d'un point de vue esthétique, on a des ressemblances ou des dissemblances? Lesquelles?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, the studies will definitely come, I think, in the now that ChatGPT is being used by everyone, and even teachers now can tell when a machine has written something and when a human did. I guess because of these little markers, that how to say, left, let's say, by the machine. But there was, I didn't exactly discuss this in my thesis, considering that I was just assuming that one of these days the machine will just write as a human. I mean, that's like the premise that I needed to start from. But there was a very interesting research. I can share it later because I don't remember the name of the researcher right now, who said that maybe we will have basically a new type of literature with marks of a machine that, you know, in a way, the machine will start making a new type of literature that when we see it, we do recognize it as that of a machine. So I think it will depend on how we will, how humans will decide to program such things, or at least if it comes randomly, if it's something that happens, let's say, by mistake. I think we have to tell the algorithm that, oh, we like this, can you do it again? Can you imitate it again? I wouldn't go much into detail about this because I don't know much about how algorithms function as much as, let's say, an engineer. I mainly deal with the results, which can be read in the human language. But yeah, I guess these are the little ideas that I thought about right now, thinking that, yeah, it will either the machine will try to look less like a machine, and we see it now with ChatGPT. If we compare them to older chatbots, they were very like robotic. Now it tries to write more like a human, and in the future it will be either maybe how to say, we cannot differentiate between them unless the programmer itself says put such signatures so that we know that this was generated by the machine, or if just some kind of a new style that is very robotic just you know, rises and is then accepted by humans and reproduced.
Thank you. Une autre question, another question?
Oui, hello?
Oui.
Yes? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Absolutely, yes. And after Judith will take the floor for another question.
Okay,
thank
you. Okay, thank you so much, Ines, for your, very rich and well articulate reflection on the role of artificial intelligence in our daily lives, and especially the consideration and authorship is something that results from accidents. And this is one of my key points that I would like to share with you, is how acceptable can the accidents be? Actually, what is human is always the result of an accident, like we ourselves are the result of chance. I mean, a man meets a woman, and that is a happy, very happy accident. Even the notion of interrogating ourselves in one's future is definitely linked to that of finding a way and a meaning out of all these accidents, because we never know what the future is about, what the future is made of. And we always take into consideration, project into the future, thinking of, well, likely accidents. This idea that you could resurrect, for instance, you spoke about French Scott. Was that Scott French? Was French Scott? Sorry, I don't remember.
Yeah, French Scott. I think family name is French, and then yeah, first name is Scott.
Yeah. So French Scott. Well, the prospect of resurrecting French Scott thanks to algorithms and I don't know what, imitating and trying to imitate from stylistic idiosyncrasies or aesthetic particularities is something that is more like illusion than real authorship. Yeah. And we, as teachers, as a teacher, as a researcher too, I have found it very easy, to spot people who try to cheat. Okay, cheaters cheat GPT, chat GPT. I don't know what it's like today. It sounds like we're focused on finding something that's really defined us. So what is purely human and that cannot be, produced by AI. So I want to say thanks. Okay, many thanks on your very articulate, very deep reflection. I don't know if I contributed somehow, but I just wanted to share this thoughts with you. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much. Thank you for your feedback, and also you did raise very important notes. Yeah, exactly. I don't have the answer exactly to any. I mean, there weren't questions anyways, but yeah, speaking about accident, I wonder how many humans, let's say a painter who just dropped a brush and then people found it fascinating while he had or she had no intentions of doing that at the beginning. I guess at the end, it just all goes back to the consumers, to the readers, or maybe to just someone along the line of I'd say those at least who decide what is going to be published and say, oh, this is good, let us put it out there, and then people have a good reaction to it, and from there people will start to imitate it, or people will tell more machines to imitate this style. And this is in a way when the consumers, or to put it in literary words, the readers contribute to authorship, because they accepted that and now it's going to be reproduced. At least that's a very limited opinion, let's say, that I have about it. As for what is human, that is like a really good question, because they say that what is human is creativity and individuality. What was the third one? Creativity, individuality. I don't remember, but those are like very vague concepts that we cannot define exactly. And I haven't looked into them just yet, because I will deal with them at the very last. But yeah, I guess it will go into the definition of what creativity is.
Thank you. Judith?
Oui, bonsoir. Merci beaucoup, Inès. Non, moi, j'avais juste envie de faire un petit... ça a réveillé comment dire, en fait, la relation qui existe entre l'auteur et l'autorité. Donc, en fait, l'auteur et l'autorité a la même racine latine, en fait. Et ça induit aussi, l'auteur induit, donc il est donc à l'origine, d'après cette étymologie, mais qu'il est aussi au-dessus. Qui a une position hiérarchique du haut vers le bas, qui force un peu à l'obéissance, et qui fait aussi que, comment dire, finalement, l'auteur n'aurait pas besoin donc, de passer par, en fait, d'imposer ses idées par la violence, puisqu'en fait, il est déjà au-dessus, il est déjà tranquille dans sa position qui est vraiment au-dessus. Et du coup, je me demandais juste si vous étiez familière avec ces questions-là, en fait, de relation entre l'autorité et l'auteur. Je pense aussi au chapitre de Hannah Arendt sur l'autorité et son analyse de Platon et de la figure du philosophe qui traduit en fait les idées et les transmet aux humains. Et je me demandais finalement en quoi est-ce que la vérité et le pouvoir qu'on attribue aux IA, enfin aux intelligences artificielles, n'est pas encore lié à cette figure autoritaire, cette figure de pouvoir, donc qu'avait le philosophe dans cette parabole de la caverne. Et en quoi aussi ce modèle d'autorité, finalement, n'est pas encore extrêmement présent aujourd'hui, en quoi il favorise aussi cette espèce de figure de l'auteur dont vous avez parlé dans votre présentation, et en quoi ça réduit aussi énormément notre vision, enfin, notre compréhension plutôt, pardon, de ces générateurs de textes dont vous parlez. Voilà, donc c'était plutôt un partage de réflexion et puis peut-être vous entendre là-dessus parce qu'il me semble que vous en avez pas parlé de cette relation entre auteur et autorité.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I am going to go next into defining this authority in my own research. But what I have in general is that when author comes from Latin and Greek, it was also sort of related to this notion of God, because it's the creator. Now, God is the creator of the world, and then the author is the creator of this fictional world. You know, he created or she created these characters and gave them a world to live in. And that's why she or he controls all of that universe. But also it was pretty real back then that the only author was God. You know, when I discussed about the scripture and then the commentator, the author, back then there was no science. But what these people wrote about is in relation to religion. So, and in a way, it was only true if what they have written about aligned with what the biblical scripture said. That's when it was considered as true. So, in a way, that God was the author of the idea, and then we just have to follow into that. Yeah, so that's I guess what I know most about authority. I think today, as authority is coming as a trust that this person has done so much research and knows so much, at least in the field of scientific research. Yeah, that we trust that this person spent so much on this topic that they know enough that we can take their information as basically a truth. In fiction, it is still much related to talent maybe, but also talent comes with practice. So this authority that the name of a person has on a book that make us trust that this is something good and valuable comes from all of this time and energy that a person put into his craft or her craft to perfect it. And that's why also I think they are entitled to be paid for that, because intellectual work is still work. And sorry, yeah, I kind of lost the other questions. Have I answered everything, or is there another question that I should discuss?
I think you answered the question about the power between the author and the fear of this power. Is there any question? If not, je vais vous remercier. C'est la dernière séance de cette année et on se retrouvera pour ceux qui le souhaitent à l'École normale supérieure le samedi 6 mai pour une grande journée consacrée à l'IA et à l'art. journée dans laquelle on aura des présentations de livres et qui sera suivie cette journée par la projection d'un film, Métropolis, accompagné par Carole Beffa au piano. Donc, ce sera à la fois une journée d'échange autour des questions de l'IA et de l'art, et aussi quelque chose d'un petit peu festif, avec un apéritif et un film. Voilà. Merci encore, Inès. On a vraiment très envie de lire ta thèse, et j'espère qu'elle viendra vite. Bonne recherche et bonne fin de journée à toutes et à tous. Au revoir.
Merci,
Merci
merci
beaucoup.
à toutes et à tous.
Merci Inès.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Merci.